Hello everyone, Quinn here, and it has been quite some time since I made a video on TCM. This is something I meant to make weeks ago, around the time the updated stuff actually came out, but it took me way longer than any other update for me to have leveled up these characters, but thankfully I was able to take advantage of the double XP they put out around Christmas, so that really got me motivated to actually playing the game again, plus gave me a lot of time to play rivals, so I'm finally, I wouldn't say burnt out, but I'm not super into the game to the point where I want to play that and nothing else. I'm actually at a stage where I can play other games. I don't have the burning passion to play that game like 24/7. But getting back into TCM, what we're here for, I don't know where to start here, so I guess I'll break down my verdict on all the patch notes itself first, and then I'll get into the meat and potatoes of the map and the two characters. So first up, we have the buff to Nancy. The buff to Nancy definitely was a debut. It only really was to her barbed wire stuff, but it definitely was very great being able to set those traps a lot faster. There is the issue of you not being able to reset your traps fast. That's still like the 8 seconds or whatever that it was before. So they definitely need to go ahead and well, decrease the time to reset traps. But if you're running pins and needles, you're better off grabbing the trap again so you can put it down to get a chance of getting an extra trap put down, as resetting it does not proc pins and needles. We have the sliding door noise. They claim to have reverted the fact that it used to follow victims, but I swore I had at least one occasion where the noise did follow the victim, and then when I went to go see if they ran into a bone chime or something, there was nothing in sight. So unless it bugged and didn't show it being broken down, I don't think they've totally fixed that. And speaking of things they totally didn't fix, it's not in a patch notes at all, I don't believe, but I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. Whatever they claim they have fixed with Grandpa to stop him from permanently highlighting victims is a lie. I've had that bug happen to me at least twice yesterday when I was playing, and it's really starting to get old. As basically, if you're not careful and avoid Grandpa revealing you, you are always at the risk of him permanently revealing you. I don't think that is the way to make Grandpa more useful. Uh, punishing victims for actually being revealed for him. I think we should be doing things to make it so they can't just stand still and counter them. But moving on, we have the nerf to hands. It does help, yes, but again, I still believe that his base ability needs to be nerfed. As the fact that he can still rip stall something twice within 3 minutes, I still believe is a little too impactful. As you're still only giving victims a good minute and change to get another objective done and escape, or he'll be able to just go ahead and stop it if he's fast enough to get to them in time. We have victim endurance. It seems like they fixed it, although some people who've used 50 endurance more than me, or rather high endurance, still claim that it doesn't feel quite the way it used to. I use 50 endurance on the game, and it still feel like I got my stamina back every time I pause for so much as a second. So I personally feel like it's good, but I don't play victim nearly as much to really have a good opinion on that. So if victim mains themselves claim that it's still not the same, I'll take their word for it. Oh yes, and that's even worse. I'm actually reading it here. They said they fixed that. No, they didn't at all. It feels like they actually made it worse. Yeah, they definitely they had the nerve to put they fixed the permanent victim highlight issue. That's laughable. Moving on though. They did seem to fix the security pins. I've definitely had plenty of doors that felt impossible to fix. Wireframe seems to be good on everybody. Well, I didn't test it on Hitchhike because it's useless on him, but it feels good so far on the others. I have not been able to test whether Clear Eyes works on bones as traps. I've tried using Clear Eyes here and there, and I never happened to run into one, but eventually I'll be able to figure out whether it actually works on that or not. They, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but it seems like they have buffed Leatherface's Rev where it feels the way it used to at launch, where When he overheads, it doesn't take up nearly as much as the bars it used to. Usually, if you're high enough in a ref, around 70, 80, you can swing right after. This also kind of affects Virginia as Leatherface not losing as much of his style afterwards from being blinded and whatnot. He usually can still swing through her powder, so she's not as big of a counter to Leatherface as she used to be. So that's something you definitely want to watch out for. They have also fixed a lot of stuff with the dialogue, so you'll hear a lot of new dialogue. Some of this stuff I recognize from when I looked up YouTube videos of all the characters' dialogue. Some of the stuff I haven't heard before, so of course all the conversation with Bones was newly recorded, but there are some lines that I think they might have re-recorded, such as lines for the family killing victims. Some of those I believe are new. Now, I remember them mentioning something about fixing issues with victims bursting out of hiding spots. I think they might have affected the iframes of hiding spots, as all the times me and even other victims that I attacked as family members tried to burst out of not even bursting out of hiding, so I'm sorry, try to jump into a hiding spot to avoid getting hit. It usually results in them getting hit still. So I mean, if they did get rid of the iframes from you getting into a hiding spot, that's good. It definitely was a really cheesy being able to just jump into a hiding spot in front of someone and they're just totally be basically invincible. Now, we do have quite a lot of issues with the new characters that I want to get into, but I go into that itself when we get into them. So right now, I could definitely say that they did add the voice effects to seeing dead bodies on the gallows and just overall go around the map, which I think is interesting. So I definitely would highly recommend using your family focus when you're in the basement, as there's a high chance that you may be able to find the victim you lost if they just, let's say, walked past the severed head hiding somewhere in the basement. You get a voice line from them, which it makes sense. I mean, you see stuff like that, I'm sure you'd gag and react to it. So that's definitely a nice little thing that they've added to the game here. And speaking of which, while we're on the top of the gallows, they seem to have bugged Wyatt. He's got the same issue that literally every new character they've added to the game has had, where they don't use the proper lines when they're being killed in an intro cinematic. Yet, when you actually manage to incap them and throw them on a gallows, you still will hear their actual line. So I'm gonna go ahead and play that and some of the other lines I mentioned earlier while I'm at it. Also, want to mention that they added new spawns for some of the maps. So far, I've only noticed one for a gas station, which I showed before, and what I'm showing you guys off now here at Family House. So I'll let you guys decide on whether these new spawns are broken or not.
Are those guts? Time for them to join that little friend of theirs. All dressed in plain white clothes, were sitting in chairs spread throughout the property. Each one was wearing a simple rope belt, a pair of sunglasses.
So now that we've gotten that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and mention the new map. So the new map definitely is very interesting, if not a little convoluted, as there are quite a few stuck spots you'll find around the map having to do with the gravestones or just straight up dead ends. So you definitely want to be careful with that map, but I highly recommend try to spend as much time as you can manage in the private lobbies, just try to figure out that map. I tried to, it didn't really help because this map is just extremely complicated. I'm starting to get the hang of the basement quite a bit. I've learned pretty early on that generally, anytime you see a tunnel looking area, you would go back and look for more of the, dare I say, finished parts of the basement. That's technically where you'll find toolboxes, bones, and even doors that lead up. Like I said, any tunnel area is just, there's nothing. You won't even find a bone scrap. There's just literally just leading from where wells are. So besides getting away from there after you well, there's no reason to go to any of the tunnel areas. Now, the new map totally gets rid of the battery escape option and replaces it with the water valve option. And what that does is basically there are three water valves you have to interact with, and after turning all three at once, it unfloods an area of the map, which then will lead to one final door you can unlock and escape. Now, there still is a generator and fuse box, as well as the valve tank. They did something interesting with the valve tank where it's behind a locked door, so you have to pick open a door to get to it. It also, since it shares the same area as the generator, sometimes you get both flows in the same area. Sometimes the generator will spawn outside of it along the valve tank. But again, if you want to escape any of those areas, you still would have to unlock one of the two gates to get to that area. There also is the good old RNG factor of the gen spawning inside could be a little safer, generally due to the fact that they have to unlock a door to get to it, but at the same time, when it spawns outside of it, there's a little bit of debate of they might want to turn the generator off first and give away what they're trying to do, or you just overall be able to protect the generator a little better as it's out. I'm sorry, inside the map and easier to explore. I'm sorry, protect rather than having to go inside the area where the locked gate is and lock down that area. As generally, even if they manage to pick both gates, the one leading out and the one inside to where again the final gate is, it's not game over. You can simply protect that gym with your life and not have to deal with the good old searching through bushes for people who are ratting around trying to kick off the gym and escape because that's the last thing they have to do. Now there is one thing about the gin escape option, as for some reason the cook cannot lock that gate with his padlock. So if they manage to get that turned off and escape or whatever, any other victim will be able to just simply escape just by turning that gin back off. So you definitely want to watch that area after they manage to turn the gin off, as if they get that gate, it's kind of game over. So kind of definitely is a threat for that Jin, especially if she has someone that can kick that Jin off immediately. And we'll get to people who are good at kicking or rather turning Jins off in a bit. But getting back into the fuse box has the same issue or rather feature as the valve exit, where you have to unlock a door in a basement, which leads to the fuse box exit itself. So it definitely helps with the rushing attempts. And as someone who's complained about it being a little too easy to escape, I can certainly say that the so far the graveyard seems very family sided, as just all the work that the victims have to do to escape definitely makes it something they have to work for. There are still some spawns where they can grab tools and get up pretty fast, but again, getting up is definitely not the hard part of escaping this map. So there's also one area of the basement where they could literally open the door. It's the same one as the door they have to open to get to the fuse box exit. And this will lead to one of the three valve exits. I initially wasn't much a fan of this, but generally due to the fact that it's only one of two, and that same area not even leading towards that final gate that you can even leave once you drain the water from the flooded area, it's generally okay. The most you really need to do is, let's say, trap that valve tank and then going to normal patrols. You don't have to really worry about them picking through that area. There's about three gates that leads to that area, albeit one of which is irrelevant to the water is unflooded. But the area with the double valves, you definitely want to watch out for. I believe there's only two ways in until you unflooded, but if they manage to get to that area, it makes it very easy for them to escape. And I believe that's the only area you can get to that will lead to the final door out, even when it's unflooded. There is an area where after the water is unflooded, you could go through a door, which kind of helps you navigate through areas of the map a little easier. But I think all it really does is just give you an extra way from the basement to the single valve area, so it's not really that major of a deal. Now there is one weird area of the map where there's a super long ladder that leads up to a bell. I believe there's a health that can spawn up there, but besides that, there's no reason to go up there. And there's also the double negative of if you've dropped down that ladder or get knocked down for the ladder, it does like 90% of your health. So you definitely want to watch out for that area. I'm not sure why the super long ladder in Abandoned Mill doesn't do that, but this one does. So again, you want to be careful there. Do not fall victim to that ladder. It's a trap going there. Now, besides that, that's really all I have to mention about the map. There's some cool aesthetics to it, such as the wells being open caskets, you being able to hide in said caskets in the basement and above the map, with there being horizontal and vertical fashions of them. So there definitely are some neat little things about the map that makes it cool. It's definitely an interesting map. Also has some rain going, so there's a nice dynamic weather to it. But there's also the mud. There's lots of mud around that just slows you down, and it seems to also slow down the family more than victims at that. So it's definitely a little bit of annoying going through that map and chasing victims with that going on. But that being said, I don't believe there's anything else to really mention about the graveyard. So we're gonna go ahead and go into the new characters. Oh, actually, there's one more thing I want to mention about the graveyard. That it is kind of busted for Bubba. There's a lot of crawl spaces and gaps down in the basement, even above the map. Although you have to really learn the map to know where these things are, as it'll definitely get you killed. It's got me killed numerous times. I've escaped that map maybe three out of the dozens of times I played on it. But it's very narrow down in that basement. So if you get caught in the wrong area and you don't know where any gaps and crawl spaces are, it's just basically death. So you got to watch that. It's cool at all that there's some nice little extra strategies and whatnot you have in the game, such as I didn't mention earlier, so I'll mention it here. Danny can inspect and tamper the water valves, so that's cool. I believe Hands can rip storm. I never played Hands on that map yet. I think he's the only fan I haven't played on that map now, actually. So I definitely have to get to that. But moving on to Bones. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Bones is terrible. I don't understand how after they made Hands completely busted. They ended up making Bones so safe. I don't know if it's because they didn't want to deal with people complain about him being busted or what, but they were just far too safe with him. He has decent stats. However, he's plagued by a bunch of bugs and stuff that just really kind of screws him over, such as the fact that right now only his harvesting works. So basically, every build you have for bones, you have 50 harvesting as you can put how many points you want to savage endurance as you want. It literally doesn't affect anything. It's still going to take a 9 hits from the kill, which is interesting because he's only got 15 savagery, yet his 15 savagery is less hits to kill than Nancy's 20 savagery. So if I had to guess, I'd say that Bones' damage scales more in line of what Johnny's would be if his savagery wasn't 30 by a base or something, because it takes like 10 hits for Nancy to kill 50 times his victims, and it's 9 for Bones. So that's very strange. Thankfully, Serrated still works, so if you were to make Bones hurt a little more, you could turn to that, and I believe any other damage perks like Activate, I believe those should still work, but I'm not sure. I'd have to go grab a friend and test damage numbers in private game to figure that out. But again, his endurance, as far as I can tell, it doesn't make him sprint longer. He only can swing about 6 times before stemming out, which could be very annoying. As he seems to be designed to be a chaser, as if I'm not mistaken, he runs about as fast as Johnny and the others. Although there's times where I've been getting chased by him as victims, and I swear he felt super fast. But moving on, we have his unique perks, which of course everybody is clamoring about. The one to go over barricades totally useless, even at level 3. It still takes him way too long to chase after victims with it. It is just the amount of distance they get from you after going over the barricades is ridiculous. They seem to not have realized what they did when they made wireframe, which is you can only go over the barricade one person at a time. So that is what's going to get them distance from you. You don't have to force it by making them go over them super slow. If anything, he should go over them faster so he can catch up to them and they aren't getting as much distance as they are. You also have the well perk. The well perk, people complain about, but personally, I think it's just fine. I have plenty of instances where they didn't seem to get much distance from me after I welled after him, or when I've welded, Bones welled right behind me. He's right behind me. The window perk, again, just like the barricade perk, is totally useless. It takes him way too long to go over I'm sorry, go out the window. It takes him like 15 seconds to recover from dropping out a window, which is way too long. Again, I guess you could probably argue that since you could jump out the window immediately after them, you would probably get a little too much distance, but just looking at other people's videos of them showing a victim jump out the window, the Bones jump after him, then you'd have like Hitchhiker go through the door, and he like beats Bones standing up. It's like if you could just go through a door faster than them jumping out the window, there's no point in a lot of maps. There's just only certain stuff like let's say abandoned mill going through that window, and then even then, unless that barricade's going again, I just go over the barricade, and you already see how useless the barricade perk is. So again, it's just they're way too safe with these perks. I could even argue that some of this stuff could be base kit. Maybe they use the perks to speed them up. I don't know. It's just besides the well perk, they need to definitely buff those other two perks since they're just super useless. Plus, Bones can use his bombs to just destroy barricades anyway, so you're better off trying to trap the barricade than route them back into it or something if you want to deal with them rather than you going over as it's just that useless. While we're on the topic of his bombs are almost useless. They take way too long to blow up. You can crouch past them. I forgot to save a clip of me crouching past the bomb, but it is definitely doable. You can test it yourself if you don't believe me. He does have the ability to highlight victims who actually get injured by his bombs, which is something that other fan members can do, but it's not map wide like Bones is. So that's cool. It also makes me want to go ahead and mention that they should maybe go back and update some of these characters as they just are very inconsistent in iterations. It's very weird that again, Bones has all map wide highlights for his bombs, and he even has a level one perk to let everyone see who he has blown up. Yet you need either level three perks or add-ons to do that. You have the ability for him to reduce victim stamina to zero. That is very effective, and I'll even show a clip here while I'm talking of me literally getting killed because of that. As me getting all my stamina drained, just gave them so many extra hits on me. Bones ends up getting me in the basement and speak, which he seems to have a similar lunge to Sissy, where it's not he doesn't swing as fast as Sissy, but he can definitely chain multiple hits much like her. So that definitely does help him a bit in the chasing category when you deal with his forced bad damage right now. Bones has the ability to increase the damage of his traps by modifying their toolboxes. That's definitely great because I believe Bones does about 30 damage from his traps base, so modifying that further definitely makes his traps hurt, especially if you stack them together as a strategy I definitely see a lot of Bones players do is trapping Grandpa. So if you manage to not find out that he trapped Grandpa in time, you'd be locked in mansion of stabbing him, and then you go ahead and get blown up. And speaking of animations, climbing up ladders, going through gaps, and going over barricades gives you iframes, so victims would not be hurt when they're doing that. You also want to be careful with where you set your traps on Slaughterhouse, as this is something I've complained about since launch, and it's very upsetting that nearly 2 years later they still haven't fixed that. For some reason, the red destructible doors that you can find all over that map, that all they did was add the ability to actually have a lock a victim has to pick through it, attached to it. Those can be destroyed by Bubba and then Bones' bomb, so besides the fact that you could get Baby Bubba to destroy those doors being stupid, if you try to trap those doors with bones, you blow up the door and let the victim in. So do not put a bomb anywhere near those doors. You gotta be careful with the fuse box. The AoE for his bombs are massive. A lot of times, and you even seen in the clip where I got blown up and lost my stamina. The bombs they don't seem like they'll hit you, but they do. And so you can blow up barricades and crossface like stuff from those massive detonations. So you want to try to put the bombs far enough away from the fuse box to where again They should still set them off, but it doesn't blow up any doors. So again, you want to be careful with stuff like that. Speaking of which, while we're on that topic, there's some spots where you put his bombs where they just like do not seem to activate properly, and there's even instances where the bomb can't be picked up by you, and thus, if you can't infract the bomb, neither will victims. They won't be able to set them off, so you just permanently lose off on a bomb the entire map because of that. So you definitely have to be careful with some of these bombs. I find that a lot of times it's where when you're placing a bomb, it's like sideways to the point where you're placing the bomb and it's not facing you when you put it down. Sometimes you need to put it under tables where like, geez, I guess you say the face of the bomb is pointing towards the floor, stuff like that. Usually won't let you pick it up or it'll detonate, so you got to be careful with that. There are some cheeky spots you can't hide the bombs that don't detonate, but for the most part, you got to experiment your own to find out through trial and error what will and will not cause the bombs to bug out and what have you. Now, you also want to watch out with some of these bombs, as the bombs have friendly fire on for both you and your family members. So you could get blown up by your own bomb. You could blow up another family member from your bombs, or just screw them over in a chase, as it's a pretty long stun time. So it's around the same stun as you get hit by a door. So you want to watch that, as that could cause a victim to escape as a result of the nonsense of the bombs. Now, he has the ability to get thrilled from a bomb, which would increase his damage and his stamina endurance. But due to his stamina being bugged, I can't tell if it works. I had one situation where I ran that level 3, and I swear it worked, but I can't tell as the stamina is so bad. You know, getting it from a bad to mediocre isn't much of a difference. So, moving on, the ability from the game. A third bomb is nice. It's a little overkill. You have, let's say, Hitchhiker and hands on your team. Sometimes just one of them with bones at all is a lot. As generally, let's say if you have Cook on your team, you being able to put one more bomb at the last gate that Cook doesn't have enough padlocks for is good enough. And then you can just throw the last one on a fuse box and you're fine. So you have that third bomb. I guess the trap Grandpa put in some other cheeky spot, but otherwise, you're better off going for his final perk, which leads to the notorious blood bill everyone's doing on Bones, where it's the build itself isn't anything new. It's just really the fact that his ability to recover a spark plug and then get a full vial of blood from it, it just allows him to be disgusting at feeding Grandpa. As if you have Universal Donor and then 50 harvesting in the bones, he's able to get so much blood that it doesn't matter how bad your bombs are if it doesn't end up getting anyone. As long as it's in a high traffic area where they're constantly being set off, you're able to just constantly feed grandpa, and even agitator doesn't matter because again they constantly blowing up your bombs. You always have another vial to feed him. And if you double stack two bombs next to grandpa, they avoid them and stab him, or get blown up after stabbing or what have you. You pick up those spark plugs one at a time. You're going to get a full vial of blood for grandpa. Get him right back up. It's like they never stabbed him, even with agitator. So again, it's something you definitely watch out for. And I'd argue Maria needs a buff to a level 3 perk. It should not be a one-time use thing. Her entire kit is based around grandpa and keeping him in check. Her only being able to do some one level when you have this disgusting blood build around doesn't make her do that job very well. It's already bad enough. Her stats are literally just honors, which are mediocre. They definitely need to look into that. Speaking of which, or in the stats, Bones also doesn't seem to have any grappler starting values. So even with grip, you might still struggle to kill someone unless you get them very low. So that's another thing they need to fix. I think his grappling should be about as good as Cook's, if not Nancy's. He seems to be in pretty good shape. He even makes fun of Cook in some of his voice lines for Cook being so slow, yet they're probably around the same age. But besides, I think that's really all I have to mention about Bones. Again, if they fix a lot of the bugs you have with him and then buff some of these things, I think he actually might be decent. Maybe even meta, as him being able to trap stuff just about as effectively as Hitchhiker. I think he definitely could swap out for Hitchhiker in a lot of situations. It's just again a lot of these goofy issues with him, and there's the gun being overall too safe with him. It really just kind of slows him down, makes him not worth picking right now. So unless you're just trying to level him up, just for the sake of having something to do in this game, like I am again, I'd avoid using Bones if I were you. As I could definitely say he's taken Nancy's place as the worst family member for sure. Now, next up, we have Wyatt. Wyatt is the complete opposite of Bones. He's falling in the same suit they do with generally all the victims until Maria was dropped, who's just mediocre, and again, they need to buff her. He is broken. Now, Wyatt is strange because his knife by default is terrible. The stun on it is awful unless you go for his level 3. It increases how long they get stunned, as not only is it pretty easy to dodge his knife, and he can literally get killed if he misses that knife, even if he has the abilities to increase how fast he whips him out, which I also want to add, don't bother stacking both of them. If you want him to take his knife out fast, you have to go to level 1, as level 2 is so minimal of a value, you won't even notice it half the time. And stacking it together, again, is so minimal, you won't even notice it. So he has strangely two of the same ability to gain an extra knife, but you can't stack those. So that's just them trying to make sure you can get an extra knife no matter where you go. But the thing is, if you have three knives and don't go for the knife retrieval, whether you miss the stun or hit it, you're still having a limited amount of knives, and it really is only valuable to put the knife retrieval on if you go for his level 3 perk, which is totally broken for a number of reasons I'll get into just a second here. It's just like useless. Like you really want to use those to make sure that you can pick up your knives back up after you've destroyed traps, which for some reason knives are like a grenade. You just take out anything in that AoE that you hit. So you could turn off the generator with it. You can take off traps with it. And that's another stupid thing. If hands traps a gen, your knife would turn off the gen and deactivate its traps. Yeah, that's just really stupid and broken. It's just I can't tell what these quality testers are doing, as things are still bugs, so they're not testing for bugs. Things aren't balanced, so they're definitely not looking to see what's balanced or not. As there's no way these guys are seeing these things are a-okay unless they're just totally casual and they're laughing at just how stupid and broken this game is. So I just don't know what they're thinking a lot of this stuff. Like White has a lot of cool perks to him and whatnot. Like he has a level 3 and it a perk itself that allows him to highlight family members you stun, kind of like the Seeing Red perk, which actually I believe he gets as well from Virginia. But again, it's just his knives being kind of useless and a little buggy. Where I've thrown my knife at hitchhiker traps to the ground and the knives bounced off of them. I threw my knives at the generators and batteries. They didn't turn off. I had to get to a different angle to hit the gen to turn it off. As throwing knives at doorways or something doesn't seem to turn off the gen. And I've had family members come through a doorway. They hadn't stunned them. It's just I don't know what is going on with Wyatt's knives, but they definitely need to look into it. And never mind the fact that they managed to bring back the Xbox crashes. Wyatt's knives itself can crash the game. I don't know if this is has something to do with which route of the tree you go through, as I've noticed going for the quicker level 1 knife, the knife retrieve on level 3 to turn off the interactions or whatever, traps and all that stuff. That seems to be fine. I don't seem to have any crashes happen during that, but I've noticed that throwing a knife while family is feeding grandpa will bug the game. Um, I've had times where just trying to throw a knife at a family member sitting by the basement exit seems to crash it. I even went through a gap and then tried to throw a knife, and then it seemed to have gave me some sort of client disconnect where it looked like my game was crashing, but on everyone's screen, I just stood still. And then moments later, it says I'm in cap, and then I die. And then finally, the game updates, and I'm dead on the floor. And I'm watching Sissy get ready to feed Grandpa from my blood. It's just this update is kind of a bit of a disaster. You have one character that's completely broken, the other character that's broken in a good sense, for if you want to play with him or play on his team. And there's just a lot of weird bugs and stuff, like, and even bugs that claim they fixed that are definitely still here. I mean, it's what, the first week of January, and the devs are still MIA. So I'm sure next week they'll finally give their little cheesy post kind of. saying, "Hey, we're back from our vacation," but at this point, they're not going to be able to get another update out until the end of the month. And I truly hope that they're able to fix a lot of these bugs or to buff some characters in this short amount of time they have to put this update out because how nice it is that they have a new mapping characters. It's just it's really morale breaking when I see so many bugs and issues with the game and just like clunky stuff like that one gate that the generator can spawn next to that leads to the exit there, where it's just such a narrow area. You're kind of forced to go one way, or you got to take the time of closing that gate to get past it to the other side, which I argue is a bit more convenient to get to that final exit at. But one final thing I could really say I have to mention it is that they need to really go look into Julie's summertime outfit as for some reason her face doesn't animate in that outfit. I mean, the victims and stuff already have very minimal animations to their face. They usually animate when they get killed or for some reason go through I think gaps and crawl spaces. But just seeing Julie with a blank face on getting killed, it just looks so fucking gross. But yeah, there's also a hacking issue. I see almost one hacker a day now, and I'm really getting sick of it. They have to do something with their anti-cheat. It's really getting old running into hackers doing all this goofy nonsense, locking you in place and whatnot. It's the part of it bother important is I feel like it doesn't do anything. Cause I still see so many hackers. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same handful of people doing it. But again, yeah, that's about it. I can't think of anything else to really mention here. Hopefully I touched up on everything in this 30 something minute video. I grabbed an hour's worth of clips here, so there's a good extra 30 minutes plus clips that I either edited from this or just didn't have the space to put in. So I'm gonna end this video with me showing off Bones' three kills. That's the two animation he comes with by default, and then his close encounter kill. So one of them, I believe the close encounter kill has me talking over, so excuse that. It's just the best cinematic angle I could get from that is usually whether you get that kill from an actual grapple or because you're too close to the wall. It never has the cinematic angle that I have, so that's why I choose that clip. But again, if you guys enjoyed this video, thank you so much. You know what to do, and as always, if you haven't already, get in life.
Now we're swinging.
Ooh, you didn't mean to do that.
We are cooking now. Put that little hind knife away, boy. Come here. You my little bitch now.